Government discusses posting of diplomats to various overseas missions. We'll have details to this story and more in the National Report.
Have you noticed an increase or decrease in your electricity bill? You know that changes in the fuel and non-fuel rates affect your bill. You should also be aware that changes in household activities affect your bill. Ask yourself these questions. Have the rates changed? Have there been more people at your home? Have your children been on holiday? Have you used your fan or air conditioning unit more often to beat the heat? Are any of your electrical appliances or equipment faulty? Have you added any new appliances such as transformers, water heaters, or pumps? Make it a habit to understand any changes on your electricity bill. For more factors that affect your bill, visit www.grenlec.com. Grenlec, energizing our Grenada.
Welcome back. With the details to the news for Tuesday, September 27th, 2022, I am Sherry-Ann Noel. The government of Grenada is currently discussing the posting of diplomats to the various missions abroad, following a policy decision taken in July of this year to review and recall the diplomatic officers who have served for the past few years. However, since the process of posting diplomats must be mutually agreed upon by Grenada and the country in which they are to be posted, those selected cannot yet be named.
It involves the repatriation of the diplomats. It involves the informing of the receiving states where they are posted of government's intention to recall the ambassadors and the other diplomats who are affected. It also involves the informing of the head of state of the intention to recall. So in itself, recall is not a quick process, but it's something that takes a period of 3 to 6 months, as I previously stated. Bearing in mind that persons are now moving from diplomatic status, which involves privileges and immunities, and returning to regular citizens, and so time needs to be given to allow persons to make the necessary transition, getting the requisite identifications, submitting the diplomatic instruments to the receiving state, and ensuring that we can adequately repatriate the diplomats.
Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Export Development, Ms. Roxy McLeish Hutchinson. Following the policy decision in July to recall the diplomatic officers, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs informed those affected through consultation, while others submitted their resignation, which the government asked the Governor General to accept through the Public Service Commission. P.S. Hutchinson says those not yet recalled have now been advised that they are ensuring that this is done successfully. During the government's post-cabinet press briefing on Tuesday, Ms. Hutchinson explained that the process must be diligently followed, since the work of the government must be continued. She says a recall is never an immediate process, but is one done over a 3 to 6 month period.
Once cabinet makes the final decision and the countries to whom the diplomats will be posted have agreed, since the process of posting diplomats has to happen on mutual consent, the ministry would be in a position to inform the nation of the persons who have been appointed as Grenada's diplomats.
Moving along, with Grenada continuing to grapple with the lingering effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Ministry of Finance says Grenada will not begin to see a return to 2019 GDP levels until next year, once the country does not suffer from another economic shock. During a parish budget consultation in St. George's on Monday, Deputy Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, Siobhan Britton, looked at data from the Central Statistical Office that show a total of about 3.2 billion EC dollars in GDP in 2019, 2.8 billion in 2020, 3 billion in 2021, and 3.1 billion in 2022.
So you notice that according to our projections, currently, we're still below 2019. And we don't project to be above 2019 performance until next year, barring any other shock that might affect the economy. So that's what this is showing there. We're still not back to where we were prior to COVID.
Ms. Britton also highlighted government's fiscal performance during the first half of 2022, which showed the state collected EC 575.6 million, up from the 432 million expected during that period. This was largely due to inflation, where prices were higher on goods, taxes collected on imports, and grants received by government. However, government spent more than it collected.
Because we budgeted to spend $461.3 million, but we spent $480.6 million. And that has to do largely with capital expenditure. As I mentioned before, we have all those ongoing projects. So largely that amount was contributed to capital expenditure. For the rest of the year, even though we have that disparity there, for the first half we collected more than we spent. Because of some expenditure obligations we have at the end of the year, we expect that on balance we would spend a little bit more than we collect for the period. Given the fact that we have the pension obligation to pay and other commitments such as increase in seed payments and so on, that would impact that there. So we still expect to spend a little bit more than we collect by the end of 2022.
The new administration of Prime Minister Honorable Deacon Mitchell has a number of plans to turn the tide around through its transformational agenda. Part of this plan is to have all hands on deck, taking into consideration the ideas and recommendations of citizens.
Once we would have collected all the suggestions, we have to, of course, do an evaluation of the suggestions. So we would look at all the suggestions and see what are some of the concrete policy. So a policy is, for example, I want to implement national health insurance. That might be the policy. Or we should extend, for example, the removal of the cap. We should extend the policy of zero petrol tax for another 6 months. That might be a policy of the government, yeah? Or you might say we need to relook how we do the bushing program, right? And by adding a component, for example, that includes training of all the bushers and so on, and not call it the bushing because it's a debasing name, and you want to call it something that's more uplifting, more empowering. And so all of those comments would be presented to the Cabinet.
Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, Mike Sylvester. Minister for Foreign Affairs, Trade and Export Development, Honorable Joseph Andal, updated the nation on Tuesday on a number of meetings held on the sidelines of the 77th session of the United Nations General Assembly, which has just concluded in New York. He says there were also bilateral engagements between Grenada and other countries, some of which yielded positive results.
One of those meetings was the 16th special meeting of the CARICOM Council for Foreign and Community Relations, COFCOR. And one of the highlights of that meeting was the need for the international community to adopt what is called a multidimensional vulnerability index to replace what stands currently, which is the use of GDP per capita as the main measure for determining the country's eligibility for concessional financing and grant funding.
Honorable Andal says if the multidimensional vulnerability index is to be adopted to replace the current GDP per capita metric, small island states stand to benefit more from available finances. He says the current per capita metric being used puts the islands at a disadvantage.
When countries are judged on that basis, Grenada, for example, is categorized as an upper middle-income country, which means that the type of soft loans or concessionary loans that we once were able to access is no longer readily available to us and to most other CARICOM countries. So we are severely disadvantaged. It is as if you're being punished for making progress. So there's a very strong call for that to be redressed and to be replaced by the Multidimensional Vulnerability Index, or MVI, as it's more commonly called these days.
CARICOM, he says, also looked at the grave security issues in Haiti, which is further compounded by many factors, not limited to food security.
Political instability, and there were several calls for the UN and other agencies not to intervene militarily, but to take measures to assist the Haitians in finding solutions to their own problems. So CARICOM is exploring the possibility, given the level of respect that CARICOM enjoys by most political actors in Haiti, of putting together a team to engage the Haitian authorities and the different political players in Haiti to come up with a framework for ending the violence and putting Haiti back on a path of peace, stability, and democracy.
There was also a meeting of the Alliance of Small Island States in which Grenada has traditionally played an important role. This is a national report. The news will continue after the break.
Prepare for hurricane. Prepare for hurricane. Make sure you have your radio and your batteries too. Waterproof flashlight, candles will do. Tin stuff, garbage bag, first aid kit. Come on people, make sure you have it. Clean water in a container and a hurricane plan. Hear me no man.
Hurricane damage is beyond your control. Surviving the aftermath is up to you. Have a hurricane plan. It can save your life and your family too.
Prepare for hurricane. Your hair, prepare for hurricane.
Welcome back. Plans are moving ahead for the commencement of work on the National Cricket Stadium. Minister with responsibility for youth, sports and culture, Honorable Ron Redhead, signed a memorandum of understanding with the People's Republic of China on Monday. Minister Redhead says the signing of the MOU signals the commencement of the transformation of the National Cricket Stadium facility, which will aid in the development of cricket and ensure the safety of those who use the facility.
We are very much appreciative of this signing here. It represents the commencement of the development of the sport of cricket, to taking the stadium facility to a next level in terms of the kindness of the People's Republic of China. We are very, very appreciative of their additional support and look forward to its completion and to the benefit of our athletes, sporting men and women.
Minister Redhead added that government is grateful for the additional support that has been given by the People's Republic of China in providing a facelift to the facility and improvement of the infrastructure. The sports minister visited and toured the stadium facilities about a month ago after high gusts of winds affected the roof and other areas of the stadium. During the tour, the team identified areas that needed urgent attention to protect the facility from further deterioration. Work to be done on the facility includes renovation of broken wall and tiles, replacement of LED screens and supporting systems and equipment, rust removal and anti-corrosion to steel structure, replacement of firefighter water pumps and fire extinguishers, replacement of elevators, repairs to the plumbing system, replacement of camera and sound system, among other things. Ambassador for the People's Republic of China in Grenada, His Excellency Wei Hongshang, will sign at a later date, after which the final signed copy will be presented before official commencement of the work on the facility. Monday's signing was witnessed by a two-member delegation from the People's Republic of China and Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture, Mr. Norman Gilbert. A national capacity building 4-day workshop on cross-border movements during times of disaster is currently underway at Camp Salines. The workshop, which is the third of its kind by the Organization of the Eastern Caribbean States (OECS), targeting border control officers, has been implemented in collaboration with a number of development partners. Carvel Lett, Permanent Secretary with responsibility for national security, home affairs, information and disaster management, reiterated the importance of border security, which she says forms a critical component of any country's national security apparatus.
We are immensely pleased that this workshop has been extended in 2022 to include more agencies and participants. This workshop is the first of 5 sessions, which will involve 9 OECS member states. Today marks the kickoff of the training sessions involving Grenada, St. Kitts and Nevis, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Dr. Clarence Henry, Senior Technical Officer in the Economic Affairs Integration Division at the OECS Commission in St. Lucia, says their focus is to add value to what's happening regionally and to strengthen member states' resolve and responses to such challenges. He says Hurricane Maria in 2017 has taught many lessons.
When those disasters strike, persons are moving potentially without documents, so undocumented movement. Our border officials need to have the skills, the capacity to figure out how to best deal with this, because while there's the humanitarian aspect of it, there's also the need to continuously preserve border security. And so that is one of the reasons why we determined that this kind of training is important. But the training also allows us to strengthen the awareness and education around the free movement of persons regime, and knowing that we have a very robust type economic union arrangement, and right now persons are also able to move freely, among the protocol member states of the OECS, and be able to come, get indefinite stay, work, and so forth. They're critical. So that too has to be part of the training process, so that persons understand, especially border officials, what are those benefits, that OECS citizens have.
Head of the Immigration Department, Superintendent Leroy Joseph, says the workshop jointly held with St. Kitts Nevis and St. Vincent the Grenadines via the virtual platform is very critical for the participants as border officials, especially in time of climate change.
We have human mobility and environmental migration, that is person moving across borders for different reasons. Now you may have a disaster in St. Vincent, for example, with the hurricane, and also Dominica. We're also faced with hurricane activities, and person may move without a travel document. Now, how would immigration and custom identify that person? And that is the purpose of the training. Do we develop a registry, a civil registry, to accommodate persons from different member states? And how do we go about processing persons across borders? Do we treat them as persons who enter the country illegal, or do we treat them as somebody who entered the country legally? Now, those matters will be discussed today. Would they be victim of climate change? And in this context, how do you treat victim in that regard?
And with that story, we come to the end of the National Report for Tuesday, September 27th, 2022. Now for a recap of the top story. Government discusses posting of diplomats of various overseas missions. On behalf of the entire news and production team, I am Sherry Ann Noel, thanking you for viewing.